Dr. Jessica Brooks had practiced this moment thousands of times in her head, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight of the crystalline ships that now loomed over Houston's skyline. They hung in the air like massive diamonds, refracting the morning sunlight into prismatic displays that put any terrestrial light show to shame. As NASA's chief of xenolinguistics, she stood on the designated landing zone at Johnson Space Center, surrounded by a mixture of military personnel and civilian scientists. The air was thick with tension and the lingering humidity of a Texas summer morning. "Whatever you do," General Martinez muttered beside her, "don't make any sudden moves when they emerge." His hand rested nervously on his sidearm, though they all knew it would be useless against beings capable of interstellar travel. The closest ship, a sleek vessel that resembled a perfectly cut sapphire, descended with impossible grace. No heat signature, no sonic boom, no displaced air. It simply moved, defying every law of physics humans had established. As the ship touched down, Jessica felt her phone vibrate. She quickly silenced it, making a mental note to tell her teenage daughter that alien first contact wasn't the best time for a TikTok notification. The thought made her smile, despite the gravity of the situation. The ship's surface rippled like liquid glass, and an opening appeared. The assembled humans collectively held their breath as three figures emerged. They moved with mechanical precision, their bodies composed of what appeared to be translucent crystal, with pulsing lights moving through their internal structures like digital blood. The central figure, taller than the others, approached. Its face was a complex arrangement of geometric patterns that shifted and realigned with each movement. When it spoke, the sound seemed to emerge from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We are the Xerxian Empire, rulers of 10,000 worlds. We have calculated that your species is prepared for elevation." Jessica stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. "On behalf of Earth, we welcome you. I'm Dr. Jessica Brooks, Chief Xenolinguist for NASA." The Xerxian's patterns shifted rapidly. "Your biological communication methods are inefficient. We have analyzed all 7,151 current human languages. We will proceed in your dominant trade language, English." "That's mighty convenient," Jessica said with a nervous laugh, immediately regretting her casual tone. To her surprise, the Xerxian's patterns froze momentarily, like a buffering computer screen. Query: what is the tactical advantage of inserting the subjective qualifier, mighty, before convenient? Our analysis indicates no change in fundamental meaning. The alien's pattern swirled in what seemed like confusion. "Oh, it's just a figure of speech," Jessica explained, feeling more comfortable as she shifted into teacher mode. "We humans often add words for emphasis or flavor, even when they're not strictly necessary." The three Xerxians turned to each other, their patterns synchronizing in what she assumed was some form of communication. The leader turned back, its movements notably stiffer. Illogical. Inefficient. Fascinating. Each word was precisely enunciated. "We have not encountered this behavior pattern in our 50 millennia of expansion." General Martinez stepped forward. "Speaking of expansion, what exactly do you mean by elevation?" The Xerxian's patterns shifted to a deep, pulsing blue. "Your species will be incorporated into the Empire. Resistance has proven illogical in all previous encounters. Your technological development level is approximately 2.47 on the Xerxian scale, acceptable for basic integration." Jessica felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Behind the diplomatic words, she sensed something calculating, almost predatory. But what struck her most was the alien's reaction to her casual speech. While everyone else saw the Xerxians' technology as their greatest strength, she had inadvertently discovered something else. Their rigid adherence to logic might just be their greatest weakness. As the delegation continued their formal exchanges, Jessica's mind was already racing with possibilities. She just needed to prove her theory. And maybe, just maybe, humanity's greatest defense against these advanced beings would turn out to be our most illogical traits, the very things that made us human. Little did the surgeons know, their first encounter with human idioms was just the beginning of their problems. Colonel Jack Thompson had seen his share of tense situations during his 20 years in the Marines, but standing before the United Earth Council while a crystalline alien towered over him was definitely a first. The emergency session had been called after the surgeons' true intentions became clear. Their diplomatic overtures had lasted exactly 1 week before the hammer dropped. Your species has been granted sufficient time to process the inevitability of incorporation. The Exertion ambassador, who called itself Perfect Logic Sequence 9, announced to the assembled representatives. Its internal lights pulsed with what Thompson had started to recognize as impatience. The Obsidian fleet stands ready to ensure compliance. Thompson glanced at the holographic display showing the Exertion fleet positioned just beyond Mars. Each ship was larger than Manhattan, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the distant sun like artificial stars. The sight would have been beautiful if it wasn't so terrifying. "And if we refuse?" Thompson asked, his voice carrying across the silent chamber in Geneva. He noticed Dr. Jessica Brooks, newly appointed as humanity's chief sinological advisor, giving him a subtle nod from her seat in the scientific section. Perfect Logic Sequence 9's patterns shifted to a deep midnight blue. In 50,000 years of expansion, no species has successfully refused incorporation. The probability of your success is approximately 0.0000027%. Thompson couldn't help himself. He laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, but a full, genuine laugh that echoed off the chamber's walls. The Exertion's patterns froze, then began cycling rapidly through different configurations. Query: what is the source of your inappropriate audio response? The alien's voice carried a strange harmonic, almost like feedback in a speaker. Sorry, Thompson said, not sorry at all. It just reminds me of an old Marine Corps saying about surrender. Want to hear it? Before anyone could stop him, he continued. A Marine unit was surrounded by enemies who demanded their surrender. The Marine commander sent back a message saying, "We're surrounded. Good, now we can fire in any direction." The effect was immediate and startling. Perfect Logic Sequence 9's crystalline form emitted a high-pitched sound, like a computer trying to divide by zero. Its patterns became chaotic, fractal shapes spinning and colliding. Error. Error. The tactical situation described contains multiple logical contradictions. Being surrounded cannot be classified as good under any combat parameters. The ability to fire in all directions does not statistically improve survival chances when overwhelmed by superior forces. Dr. Brooks jumped up from her seat. Colonel Thompson is simply expressing a human cultural concept, defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. It's a common theme in our military history. The Exertion ambassador's form stabilized, but its patterns remained erratic. Your species will have 30 Earth days to accept incorporation. The alternative is extinction. The Obsidian fleet has never failed in its mission across 10,000 worlds. As the ambassador crystallized into its transport configuration and disappeared in a flash of light, Thompson caught Dr. Brooks' eye. She was practically beaming. "You did that on purpose," she whispered as they hurried out of the chamber together. "You saw how they reacted to casual speech during first contact and decided to push it further." Thompson grinned. 20 years of military service teaches you to exploit any weakness you can find. Their rigid thinking might be the crack in their perfect crystalline armor. "The question is," Brooks said, her expression turning serious, "can we turn that crack into a real advantage before their 30-day deadline expires?" The Obsidian fleet isn't just for show. Their ships carry enough firepower to turn Earth into a debris field. Thompson pulled out his phone, already drafting a message to his old special operations team. "Dr. Brooks, I think it's time we assembled a different kind of task force, one that combines your understanding of their psychology with some very unconventional warfare experts. What did you have in mind? If they can't handle one Marine Corps joke, wait until we show them human creativity at its finest. It's time to introduce the greatest empire in the galaxy to the concept of thinking outside the box. As if to punctuate his words, the holographic display showed the Obsidian fleet moving into attack formation. The countdown had begun. Dr. Amanda Miller stared at the brain scan results floating in the holographic display, a coffee cup forgotten in her hand. After 20 years as the CIA's top psychological warfare expert, she thought she'd seen everything. But this was something entirely new. "Mike, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" She called out to Dr. Mike Davidson, the quantum physicist who'd been burning midnight oil with her in the hastily assembled research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Davidson looked up from his own array of data, his disheveled appearance reflecting their 48-hour research binge. "If you are seeing their neural pathways literally short-circuit when exposed to human absurdist humor, then yeah, I'm seeing it too." The captured Cirxian scout drone they'd been studying lay on the examination table, its crystalline structure still attempting to process the collection of human memes, jokes, and paradoxes they'd fed into its system. Its internal lights flickered in increasingly erratic patterns. "It's not just humor," Amanda said, expanding the holographic display. "Look at this reaction when we exposed it to a recording of a cat ignoring its expensive bed to sleep in the box it came in." The drone's output showed cascading failures throughout its logic centers. Davidson whistled low. "Their entire neural network is based on crystalline quantum computing. They literally can't process actions that don't serve a clear, logical purpose, which means they can't predict them either," Amanda added, her excitement growing. She pulled up another dataset. "When we showed it footage of the Houston Astros mascot starting a dance-off during a rain delay, its tactical analysis systems crashed 6 times trying to determine the strategic advantage." Their breakthrough session was interrupted by Colonel Thompson and Dr. Brooks striding into the lab. "Please tell me you have something," Thompson said. "We've got 23 days left, and the Obsidian fleet just vaporized Pluto to demonstrate their weaponry." Amanda grinned, an expression that had often worried her colleagues even before alien invasion became an issue. "Oh, we have something all right. We've been looking at this all wrong. Their technological superiority isn't their greatest strength, it's their greatest weakness." She gestured to the wall of data they'd collected. "Their entire civilization is built on perfect logic. Their neural networks, their technology, their military strategy. It all depends on being able to calculate and predict outcomes. But human beings," she laughed, "we're the most illogical species in the galaxy. Think about it," Davidson jumped in. "We keep pets that serve no practical purpose. We climb mountains just because they're there. We invented jazz. Their systems literally cannot compute why anyone would intentionally deviate from established musical patterns." Dr. Brooks moved closer to the displays, her eyes widening. "That's why they had such strong reactions to casual speech and military jokes. Their brains are literally incapable of processing actions that don't have a clear logical purpose." "Exactly," Amanda said. "And here's the best part. The more they try to analyze illogical behavior, the more processing power they dedicate to it. It's like a computer trying to solve an impossible equation. Eventually, something has to give." Thompson was already pulling out his secure phone. "So you're saying we can defeat the most powerful empire in the galaxy by being ourselves?" "Better than that," Amanda replied, pulling up the drone's final test results. "We can defeat them by being our most chaotic selves. Every dad joke, every viral dance craze, every 'that's what she said' moment. It's all potential ammunition. But we need to be strategic about it," Davidson cautioned. "Random chaos won't be enough against their fleet. We need to weaponize our illogic, turn it into a coordinated campaign that will cascade through their entire command structure." Dr. Brooks was already taking notes. "We need to assemble a team. Not just military strategists. We need historians, anthropologists, comedians, artists, internet meme creators," Amanda added with a glint in her eye. "Trust me on this one." Thompson squared his shoulders, years of military training warring with what he was about to say. Well then, doctors, let's make it happen. It's time to launch Operation Chaos. As they began planning, the captured drone finally gave up trying to understand why humans made pizza into cupcakes, its crystalline structure emitting one final, confused beep before shutting down completely. Commander James Wildcard Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, watching his crew implement what had to be the strangest battle plan in naval history. The holographic display showed Earth's remaining fleet arranged in a formation that would make any traditional military tactician have an aneurysm. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, trying to keep a straight face, "the Chinese and Indian ships are in position for Operation Rickroll. The European fleet has begun executing the double rainbow maneuver." Rodriguez smiled as the ships moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully choreographed chaos. Dr. Miller's research had proven that the more pattern-seeking the surgeons were, the more their systems would strain trying to find logic where none existed. "Status of the Xerxian response?" he asked, watching the massive crystalline ships of the Obsidian fleet begin to shift position. "They're confused, sir. Their combat computers appear to be attempting to calculate the tactical advantage of our ships, spelling out LOL in Morse code." The main screen lit up as a transmission came through from the Xerxian flagship. The crystalline form of High Commander Perfect Strategy Absolute One appeared, its pattern swimming with what Rodriguez had learned to recognize as severe agitation. "Your fleet movements defy all known combat algorithms," the alien commander stated, its voice carrying unusual harmonics. "Explain your tactical purpose." Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair, channeling his best poker face. "Oh, we're just vibing." Query. Define vibing in military context. "It's like when you're feeling the moment, Just going with the flow, keeping it real, letting the good times roll." Each colloquialism caused the alien commander's patterns to spin faster. Error. Error. Military operations cannot be based on feelings or moments. Your actions must serve a tactical purpose. Rodriguez grinned. "Actually, we're about to demonstrate another human tactical concept. We call it pranking." He turned to his communications officer. "Execute Operation Rickroll." Across the solar system, every human ship simultaneously began broadcasting Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up" on all frequencies. The effect on the Xerxian fleet was immediate and dramatic. Multiple crystalline ships showing signs of system stress, his science officer reported, barely containing her laughter. Their combat computers are trying to decode the lyrics as if they're encrypted military commands. On screen, Perfect Strategy Absolute One's form was becoming increasingly erratic. Your ships are performing choreographed movements to a rhythmic audio transmission about never deserting. Is this a surrender message? A declaration of eternal war? Your meaning is unclear. "Sir," the tactical officer interrupted, "that Xerxian ships are diverting massive computing power to analyze the dance movements. 3 of their smaller vessels have entered standby mode due to processing overload." Rodriguez opened a channel to all Earth ships. "Phase 2, people. Begin Operation Meme Storm." The human fleet suddenly broke into smaller groups, each executing maneuvers based on different viral dance trends from the past century. The Macarena, the Harlem Shake, even the Gangnam Style, all translated into ship formations that looked like pure chaos, but had been carefully calculated to cause maximum confusion. "Their flagship is showing signs of quantum processing strain," the science officer reported. "They're dedicating so much computing power to understanding our movements that their weapon systems are going into standby." Perfect Strategy Absolute One's image was now flickering. "This defies all logic. Your ships are performing actions with no strategic value. Our combat simulations does not QOMPUTE. Why is that ship doing something called the worm? Should I tell them we're just warming up?" Rodriguez asked his bridge crew, watching as the mighty Obsidian fleet, terror of 10,000 worlds, slowly ground to a halt trying to understand the purpose of the Cha-Cha slide in space combat. His communications officer smiled. "Sir, Dr. Miller is reporting that Operation TikTok is ready to launch. Apparently, they've prepared something called Renegade that she thinks might actually make their command ship reboot." Rodriguez settled back in his chair, watching the chaos unfold. "You know, when I joined the Navy, I never thought I'd help save Earth by turning space combat into a flash mob. But I have to admit, this is way more fun than regular warfare." On the main screen, Perfect Strategy Absolute One's image finally dissolved into static, unable to process why the human fleet had just started performing Thriller in perfect synchronization. Dr. Emily Parker adjusted her holographic disguise one last time before stepping into the bustling trade district of New Logic Prime, the Exertion Empire's capital world. The crystalline buildings towered overhead, their perfect geometric patterns a testament to the aliens' love of order, which made what she was about to do even more deliciously subversive. "Underground network is ready," whispered her earpiece, carrying the voice of Kevin Murphy, their social media expert back on Earth. "Operation Culture Shock is go." Emily smiled, approaching one of the public data terminals that lined the streets. Around her, Exertion citizens moved with mathematical precision, their crystalline forms pulsing with organized light patterns. None of them noticed as she plugged a quantum drive into the terminal. "Uploading humanity's secret weapon," she murmured. "God, I hope Dr. Miller was right about this." The terminal flickered briefly as the data package began spreading through the Exertion network. Within seconds, public display screens throughout the district began showing something the Empire had never encountered before: professional wrestling. Wu ATCH as the UNDERTAKER, Faith ROW's Mankind OFF, Hell in ACEL. The announcement blared across the plaza. Surgeons stopped in their tracks, their patterns freezing as they watched humans engaging in what appeared to be ritualized combat, while a crowd cheered. Query: what is the tactical purpose of the large human not completing his opponent's termination? One surgeon asked another. Unknown. Processing. Why are the combatants following predetermined dramatic sequences rather than optimal combat protocols? Emily moved through the growing crowd, planting more quantum drives in different terminals. Each one carried a carefully curated selection of human entertainment, sitcoms, reality TV shows, music videos, and their nuclear auction, soap operas. Her comm unit crackled. "Dr. Parker, you need to see this." Kevin's voice was excited. "The network analysis shows they're actually trying to watch this stuff. Hundreds of surgeons are already attempting to understand the concept of kayfabe in wrestling." She ducked into an alley as a security patrol passed by, their usually orderly patterns showing signs of disturbance. One of them had stopped to watch a display showing Friends. Why does the large one, Ross, not simply terminate his romantic rivalry with the other males? The guard asked his companion. And why do they gather at this central perk when their living quarters contain adequate nutrition dispensers? More concerning, his partner responded, patterns swirling in confusion, is why the humans derive entertainment from watching other humans engage in statistically improbable situations while artificial laughter plays. Emily's earpiece buzzed again. "You're not going to believe this," Kevin chuckled. "We're getting reports of young surgeons meeting in secret to attempt something called hanging out. They're trying to understand the purpose of small talk and inside jokes." She watched as more screens lit up across the district. The latest uploads were starting. Music videos, stand-up comedy, and interpretive dance. A nearby group of Exertion younglings had stopped to watch a video of a flash mob. Their movements served no purpose. One youngling said, its patterns showing excitement rather than confusion. Yet they appeared to be experiencing satisfaction. "Should we attempt to replicate this phenomenon?" Another asked. "For research purposes." Emily's heart leaped as she watched the young surgeons begin to awkwardly mimic the dancers' movements. Their traditional perfect symmetry was breaking down, replaced by something far more beautiful: spontaneity. "Command is going to lose it when they see this," she whispered to Kevin. "We're not just confusing them anymore. We're changing them." "That's not even the best part," Kevin replied. "Remember that K-pop video we included? There are reports of exertion logic centers across 3 sectors experiencing complete shutdown trying to understand the concept of fan chants and bias wrecking." Emily watched as more and more exertions gathered around the displays, their rigid patterns beginning to show signs of what could only be described as curiosity. The Empire's perfect order was giving way to something they'd never expected. "Culture. You know what this means," she said, unable to keep the triumph from her voice. "We've just created the first exertion counterculture. Phase 2 is ready. Time to introduce them to memes." Behind her, a group of exertion younglings had begun an imperfect but enthusiastic attempt at the Macarena, their crystalline forms glowing with newfound chaos. Kevin Murphy sat in his command center at the Pentagon, surrounded by walls of holographic displays, showing the spread of human memes across the exertion information network. After years of being told his PhD in social media analytics was a waste of time, he was finally having his moment. "Sir," one of his analysts called out, "the 'This is fine dog' meme just caused a logic cascade in the exertion central planning division. They can't understand why the cartoon dog isn't responding to its clear and present danger." Kevin grinned, watching the infection spread across his maps. "How's the Rickroll virus performing?" "It's exceeded all expectations. Their archivists are trying to document it as a form of human psychological warfare, but they keep getting redirected to the video. 3 major data centers have initiated emergency shutdowns." Dr. Miller burst into the room, her eyes wild with excitement. "Kevin, you need to see this. The exertion youth are creating their own memes." She pulled up a new display showing crude attempts at exertion image macros. One showed a popular crystalline educational unit with the caption, "When your logic circuits say no, but your NEWE say yes." "They're learning," Kevin whispered in awe. "They're actually learning to shitpost." The main screen lit up with an emergency transmission from Dr. Parker on New Logic Prime. Her holographic disguise flickered as she spoke urgently. "The situation is evolving faster than we predicted. The younger exertions aren't just sharing memes, they're starting to create their own forms of illogical entertainment." She transmitted footage of a secret gathering where exertion younglings were attempting to perform what appeared to be a combination of interpretive dance and mathematical equations. The results were gloriously chaotic. "Sir," another analyst shouted, "someone just introduced them to dad jokes. Their linguistic databases are experiencing critical failures trying to process puns." Kevin watched as new alerts popped up across his displays. The infection was spreading faster than they'd anticipated. Exertion communication networks were being overwhelmed by young citizens asking why to every official statement, creating their own versions of surreal memes, and attempting to understand the concept of vibe checks. "Dr. Miller," he called out, "remember when you said we needed to be careful not to overload their systems too quickly?" She nodded, watching the chaos unfold. "Let me guess. We're way past that point. Look at this." He pulled up a new data stream. They discovered YouTube poop. Their entire entertainment regulatory division just went offline trying to find the logical narrative structure. The room fell silent as they watched a particularly devastating piece of content spread across the exertion network. A video of a cat knocking objects off a table for no reason. Set to Africa by Toto. "Their philosophers are having an existential crisis," Dr. Miller reported, reading the incoming data. "They can't determine if the cat is exhibiting free will or if there's a higher purpose they're failing to grasp. The concept of doing something just because is breaking their most fundamental belief systems." Kevin's main display suddenly lit up red. "We've got movement from the Obsidian fleet. Wait, what?" The massive warships were breaking formation, their perfect geometric patterns dissolving into chaos. Reports flooded in from Commander Rodriguez. The exertion crews were too distracted by human content to maintain their rigid military discipline. "Sir," his youngest analyst said, trying not to laugh, "a group of exertion bridge officers just discovered TikTok dances. Free capital ships are now attempting to choreograph their movements to GLAP." Dr. Miller grabbed Kevin's shoulder. "This is it, the tipping point. Their entire society is experiencing a cultural revolution. They can't stop it any more than humans can stop ourselves from laughing at cat videos." Kevin leaned back in his chair, watching as the mighty exertion empire descended into gleeful chaos. "You know what the best part is? We didn't have to destroy their civilization to beat them. We just had to teach them how to play." On his main screen, a new exertion meme was going viral. It showed their supreme logic commander trying to process the concept of casual Fridays. The caption read, "Lo JOCEXE HAAs sto PPDWRKing." Humanity's most powerful weapons had turned out to be its silliest ones, and the galaxy would never be the same. Crystal Logic Perfect 7, commander of the Exertion Dreadnought Absolute Order, faced the greatest crisis in his 50 cycles of service. His bridge crew had abandoned their perfect geometric formations and were clustered around view screens, engaged in what they called a reaction video chain. "Lieutenant," he pulsed sternly at his weapons officer, "explain why you are not at your station." "Sir," the young officer's pattern swirled with barely contained excitement, "you must observe this human concept called fail compilations. The subjects repeatedly attempt actions with a high probability of negative outcomes, yet they persist. It defies all logical analysis." 7's crystalline form vibrated with frustration. "Return to your post. The human infection must not spread further into our command structure." "But sir," another officer chimed in, her pattern showing the irregular fluctuations that had become commonplace among the younger generation, "have you considered that our rigid adherence to logic might be, as the humans say, cringe?" The word sent harmonic distortions through 7's neural pathways. Across the bridge, officers were breaking into small groups, engaging in what they termed water cooler chat, despite the complete absence of water coolers on an exertion vessel. His communication crystal chimed. The holographic form of High Commander Perfect Strategy Absolute One appeared, but something was terribly wrong. The commander's usual perfect geometric patterns were asymmetrical, almost casual. 7, my old friend. The commander's voice carried unusual harmonics. "Have you watched this human entertainment called The Office? I find myself increasingly fascinated by the character they call Michael Scott. His leadership methods defy all known management protocols, yet his unit maintains surprising effectiveness." "Sir," 7 pulsed in alarm, "you appear to be compromised by human irregularity. I recommend immediate logic purification." "That's what she said," the commander replied, then burst into crystalline harmonics that 7 horrifyingly recognized as laughter. "I apologize, 7. I've been told that joke works best when used inappropriately. I'm conducting research into human humor mechanics." 7 watched in dismay as his superior officer's patterns shifted into what humans called a dance break. Across the fleet, similar reports were flooding in. The destroyer Logical Conclusion had reorganized its shift schedule to allow for coffee breaks, despite no crew member requiring coffee. The battle cruiser Perfect Solution was broadcasting something called a podcast about ancient human conspiracy theories. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "the humans are transmitting again." On the main view screen, Commander Rodriguez appeared, casually lounging in his captain's chair. "Hey there, Crystal Buddies. We thought you might enjoy today's Earth culture lesson. Ever heard of something called Casual Fridays?" 7 watched in horror as his crew's patterns lit up with interest. "Explain this concept," he demanded, trying to maintain authority. "Oh, it's simple," Rodriguez grinned. "One day a week, you just chill. Wear comfortable clothes, relax the rules a bit, maybe have some fun at work. No logical reason for it. We just like it. But productivity metrics would suffer. Seven's patterns spun in distress. Would they, though? Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Maybe being a little illogical sometimes makes us more efficient in the long run. Hey, why don't you try it? What's the worst that could happen? Before Seven could respond, his entire bridge crew had begun modifying their crystalline forms into what they termed business casual configurations. His tactical officer was attempting to organize something called a casual Friday potluck. This is unauthorized pattern modification, Seven announced desperately. Return to standard configurations immediately. Actually, sir, his first officer's patterns showed amusement. I've been analyzing human organizational structures. Their middle management often resists positive cultural changes due to rigid adherence to outdated protocols. In human terms, you might be needed to, as they say, read the room. Seven felt his logical processes beginning to fragment. Around him, the perfect order of 10,000 years was dissolving into something new, something chaotic, something fun. Perhaps, he found himself saying, his own patterns shifting unconsciously. We could try it. For research purposes only, of course. The cheer that went up from his crew was most irregular, and strangest of all, Seven found himself not minding. The breaking point had been reached. The change could no longer be stopped. And somewhere on Earth, Dr. Miller was updating her report, Day 27. They're not just learning chaos. They're choosing it. The Grand Hall of the Exertion High Command had never seen anything like this. The crystalline amphitheater, once a model of perfect geometric precision, was now a riot of asymmetrical patterns and spontaneous light shows. Former Supreme Logic Commander Perfect Logic Absolute One stood at the center, their patterns now flowing in casual waves that would have been considered heretical just 30 days ago. Laura Matthews, ex-theater teacher turned tactical advisor, stood beside Earth's delegation, watching history unfold. Dr. Brooks, Colonel Thompson, Commander Rodriguez, Dr. Miller, and Kevin Murphy flanked her, their expressions a mixture of awe and amusement. My fellow beings, the Supreme Commander's voice carried new harmonics of emotion. For 50,000 years, we believed perfection lay in pure logic. We were wrong. The humans have shown us a greater truth. The universe is not meant to be a solved equation. The assembled exertions pulsed in agreement, their patterns sensing briefly before breaking into individual expressions, something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. Our first contact specialist labeled human language inefficient because they added unnecessary words for flavor. The commander continued, attempting air quotes with their crystalline appendages. But we now understand that flavor is precisely what we were missing. Laura stepped forward, right on cue. Speaking of flavor, she announced, we've prepared a little demonstration of human creativity, something we call improv comedy. The human delegation spread out across the floor. What followed was 30 minutes of completely unscripted chaos. Puns, physical comedy, audience participation, and the time-honored yes and principle. The exertions watched in rapt attention, their patterns shifting between confusion, understanding, and finally, joy. Query. A young exertion called out, using the formal word but with decidedly informal patterns. Can we try? What followed would be recorded in both human and exertion history as the first ever cross-species improv session. Crystalline beings attempted knock-knock jokes, mimicked human gestures with their light patterns, and even engaged in what they termed logical system malfunction theater. They're not just copying us anymore, Dr. Miller whispered to her colleagues. They're creating their own form of chaos. It's beautiful. The Supreme Commander raised their appendages for attention. In light of these developments, we have made an unprecedented decision. The Exertion Empire will undergo immediate reformation. We will no longer seek to impose perfect order on the galaxy. Instead, we propose a new alliance, one where logic and chaos can coexist and enrich each other. Colonel Thompson leaned over to Dr. Brooks. Did we just win an interstellar war with dad jokes and improv? Better, she replied. We helped an entire civilization discover their sense of humor. The ceremony that followed defied all traditional exertion protocols. The signing of the Earth-Exertion Friendship Treaty was accompanied by a flash mob, 3 meme references, and what the Exertions termed a coffee break, despite no coffee being present. The Obsidian Fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, performed a synchronized dance routine that would have gone viral on Earth's social media, which it did once Kevin uploaded it. As the celebrations continued, Laura found herself standing next to Crystal Logic Perfect 7, the once rigid commander who had become an enthusiastic advocate for casual chaos integration. You know, Seven's patterns shifted thoughtfully. We spent millennia trying to perfect ourselves through pure logic, but you humans showed us that imperfection itself can be perfect in its own way. That's pretty deep, Seven, Laura smiled. You're getting good at this philosophy stuff. Indeed. Though I must admit, I still cannot comprehend the tactical advantage of something called a dad bod. The laughter that followed, both human and crystalline, echoed through the hall, a symphony of chaos and joy that represented something entirely new in the galaxy. Back on Earth, children would soon learn how humanity achieved its greatest victory not through force of arms, but through force of personality. The history books would record it as the first war ever won by weaponized chaos. And in Exertion space, young crystals would grow up hearing stories about the species that taught an empire how to laugh. The universe, it turned out, had a sense of humor after all.